South
Africa. England. Ireland.
England?
Germany.
England.
Ivory Coast.
Ooh, that's far away.
Peru.
Peru, oh, that's also far away.
England.
England.
You guys? China?
Germany.
England.
England, England?
Letonia.
Sweden and Canada.
Uh-huh.
England.
Russia?
Taiwan.
Sweden.
Minnesota.
Aussies.
Sweden.
Okay, cool. We are a really international group. I can play like a mini game, you know, collect the continents. But one thing what I would strongly recommend for those people who are coming from different continents, we Europeans, we have this one annoying habit. We think that everyone knows European history. Meaning if at some moment there is some term or phrase which doesn't connect well, don't be shy to ask, I will explain. It was a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about religion and I was like, yeah, in 1500s there was happening Reformation, and there was this one girl from South Korea, she was like, what's Reformation? So if there is some word which sort of doesn't connect, just ask, I will explain, okay? Cool. Then, about some basics of the basics, probably for some of you, you have read something about Riga before you were coming here, or for some of you, this is like a new discovery. That's why we will start with some basic framework, with some basic knowledge, so later it's a little bit easier to follow the stories. And I would say that you need to know only two things about Riga, then it's a little bit easier to follow the stories. First of all, as always, it's the origin story. So Riga is just a little bit older than 800 years. Before those 800s, here were tiny pagan villages. Meaning at the end of 1100s, all around Europe, in Spain or Russia, Scandinavia or Greece, every corner of Europe, at the end of 1100s, there is Christianity. So people worshipping Jesus Christ, building churches, cathedrals, all of that shtick. Exception was modern-day Baltics, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and to be fair, a little piece of Finland as well. There was living the last people still worshipping into, nature elements, war gods, thunder gods, worshipping wolves and birds and all of that. So paganism. Until Germans had this bright idea to bring us Christianity. And by the way, in all history, pretty much every story starts or ends with Germans. It's like a running theme. So yeah, Germans thought that they will introduce us with the love of Jesus. And how do you think? What is the best way to convert someone to Christianity? How do you do that? Yeah, precisely, you kill people. That will be the more efficient way. Because what's the main idea in Christianity? It's all about love, it's all about peace, it's all about understanding each other's feelings. So obviously you will be peacefully slaughtering everyone who slightly disagrees with your message of peace. You know crusades, right? There have been so many crusades all around the globe. The most popular one, or the most well-known of, definitely is in Jerusalem, the Holy Land, you know, Templars, Richard the Lionheart. Hollywood loves that story. If you have been to Spain or Portugal, you know Reconquista. It also was a holy war. And we got one here in the Baltics. In Latvia's case, it was mostly done with German knights, Teutonical Orden. That's a black cross on white background. And this story is extremely important for your understanding of the city, because during these crusades at 1201, so 818 years ago, these German knights, they made this city. While in Estonian case, Tallinn was founded by Danish knights. So they also got crusade, but a little bit more from Scandinavian direction. And if I recall correctly, 1219 was Tallinn, so a little bit after Riga. So one thing which will help you to understand this city, keep in mind, from day one, this is more German city than local. So if you have traveled through, let's say, northern Germany, if you have been to Hamburg, Lübeck, maybe lower Magdeburg, you can see a lot of similarities right away. Those red brick churches on every corner, they are screaming northern Germany. Plus some 60-70% of my stories this morning, they will be not about Latvians, but about Germans. Because Germans have lived here for centuries. They have left a big imprint in these streets. So if you go through this city and you see, let's say, a sculpture for a German intellectual, a poet or writer, it makes sense. Yep. So otherwise, this is always so confusing people. Always tourists are asking why on this wall something is written in German. Because the building was probably built by Germans. So when you keep this in mind, it makes more sense. Second thing to keep in mind, what will help you to understand this city, is why Germans picked this location. And it's as simple if you check the map. There is amazing potential for trade. River Daugava, which cuts the city in half, it's going deeply into Russia with the name Duna. And that's a trade route with East. Not far from here, it's entering the Baltic Sea. And that's a trade route with Dutch, Belgian, German, Scandinavian, by a longer extension, I would say even English territories. So through the centuries, we have been this sort of like a gateway between East and West, North and South. And that's why our history is so complicated. Because you know, if there is a new superpower coming on the political theater, first thing they try to do is to conquer locations, what will give a steady stream of income. That's why we have been pretty much conquered by everyone who wasn't lazy to come. Our history, it's just a bloody mess. It's not even a joke. Check our history books. We have been conquered by Germans, Russians, Swedes, Poles, Soviets, Nazis, and some of them have been here multiple times. So I think it's quite obvious that in this walking tour, which is taking like 90 minutes, I cannot give you an entire story of Riga. It's just way too many things have happened. But out of complicated stories, there is coming amazing side product, and that's diversity. Every superpower, they reshape this city. And that's why we are UNESCO World Heritage from 1997. Not because of medieval time buildings or Art Nouveau buildings, but because we have full timeline of European architecture. From when the city is made, so Romanesque and Gothical architecture, and ending with amazing examples of contemporary architecture. So that's the plan of this walking tour. I will try to showcase as many faces of Riga as I can squeeze in into 90 minutes. Any questions? Nope. Instant walks, because the cars. So as I said, the city was founded by Germans in 1201. And as every trading hub, the city became quite international quite fast. A lot of foreign traders started to move in. And from 1600s, European trade was heavily dominated by Holland, by Dutch. And you know, Germans and Dutch, they had good trading relationships back in the day. So in this German-dominated city, Riga, as an act of goodwill, this street was given to the Dutch. So this was like the little Netherlands of Riga. But you can be proud because, yeah, for example, if you have been to the Netherlands, the style of architecture they are the most proud of is probably the Dutch Baroque. And we have some Dutch Baroque in Riga as well. This Calvinist church, 1733. That building where there is the Belgian beer pub, 1744. And some buildings on the far side of that street. Those are the facades which you would more typically see somewhere in the Netherlands, or maybe Belgium, Northern Germany, but not this part of Europe. And that's the thing what I pretty much love about our history. Because we have not only this basic timeline of European architecture, we have some random bits here and there as well. Because the Dutch community in Riga was never big. It wasn't bigger than like 10 families, but it was enough to generate the feeling of a little bit of a Netherlands architecture. And about this church, there's two important stories. First of all, I think everyone knows that Soviet Union, it maybe wasn't the most welcoming time for religion. You know, sometimes they changed the content of religious buildings. In churches, there was starting from storage space, ending with concert hall, whatever came in the mind of local communists. Regarding this building, there was a really creative and I would say amazing solution. So in late Soviet Latvia, in this structure, there was a music record studio. And the vinyls which were recorded there were quite famous all around the USSR because of the sound quality. It's a church, arches. It's forming amazing acoustics. With the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, building again is belonging to the church. At the moment, no more Calvinists, so we don't have so much Dutch anymore, only two guys in the walking tour. Now it's belonging to the Lutheran Church. And I would say that they are pretty much carrying on the Soviet concept. Because it's not used for daily religious activities. For example, tomorrow, Sunday morning, it will be closed, not like a morning mass or something like that. It's used as a Lutheran youth center. So Christian rock bands and poetry slams and contemporary art events in general. So it's more for the culture than simply for religion. Then about the same church, there's quite an important story regarding the Second World War. But before I can dive into that story, we must go literally around the corner. We must see one more building before. So, any questions this far? How important is religion in Latvia? The official religion is this. Because Latvia, Estonia and Scandinavia is one of the most secular parts of Europe. And one thing what would, and don't take this as a fact, it's just my sort of a educated guess. First of all, religion moved, well not religion, but Christianity moved in modern day Baltics quite late. Secondly, harsh winters. When it's minus 20, you stop believing in God. So maybe you see Scandinavia, Estonia, when it's cold, you are like, nope. But also what's a big factor, how often the superpowers changed. You know, at first it's Germans, they are like, you will be Christians. Then even Germans had a disagreement, you know, Reformation, this split in Christianity. They were like, we could be Protestants, not Catholics. Then we are invaded by Poles, and Poles are like, nope, Protestantism, bad idea, you will be Catholics. Then Swedes move in, they're like, nope, you will be Protestants. Then Imperial Russia moves in, and they're like, have you heard about Russian Orthodox? So, like, each century, the official religion is changing. So maybe that's the reason why people just stopped caring about it. Because yeah, Latvia is quite a secular if we talk about religion. Religious people will be mostly from the older generation, because in the Soviet Union, religion was almost one of those, how to say, tools of how to say like, nope, I'm not supporting the system, like an act of resistance. But with this generation where, you know, you're spending more time online than with your friends, then yeah, church doesn't play so much of a role here. And to illustrate, you know, in almost every European parliament, when there's multi-party system, there's this one religious conservative party. We don't have that. So no confession, no Protestants, no Russian Orthodox, no Catholics, they have no representation as a political force in our political scene. Yep. About Latvian flag?
I know about this story.
About Latvian flag, you know, red, white, red, it's one of the oldest flags of Europe, actually. Because, you know, nationalities as, let's say, Latvians, Germans, or, I don't know, Russians, it's a concept only of 1800s. Before that, you were more thinking about your profession or your region. Like, I'm a beer maker from, I don't know, Novgorod, or I'm a craftsman from Riga, not that I'm a Latvian or something. And in 1800s, when nationalism was the main philosophical idea, the same was going on in Latvia. The Latvia's nationalist movement was looking for some sort of like a visual identity, something that you can put on yourself so people see that you like support the idea. So they went through the chronics describing the events of the Baltic Crusade, and we have this amazing historical source. It's called the Chronic of Heinrich of Livonia. It's like really thick book. I have read it like 5 times. It's super interesting. It's like blood and violence on every page, what else you need? And there's this entry from 1278 that one Latvian war company is going in a battle with a banner, red, white, red. So they took the color combination for the nationalist movements, and when we made our country, it became our flag. So yeah, we can track it down to 1278, and if you are thinking to give this question, is there a connection with Austria? Don't even go this direction, no. It's a super common and super annoying question. No, we have nothing to do with Austria. Because let's be honest, red, white, red is maybe not the most original color combination. So it's pretty much everywhere. And this is the only remaining synagogue in this city. So since mid-1600s in Riga there was quite a big Jewish community. And it was constantly growing, as every old trading hub back in the day. Until before the Second World War, the Jewish community in Riga was forming around 10% of all Rigans, so it was quite a big community. Until the Nazi occupation. And during the Holocaust, we basically lost our entire Jewish community. When the Nazis took the city in 1941, July 1st, only after 3 days, July 4, they put to the flame everything connected with Jewish religious belief. Not only synagogues were destroyed, also the so-called mikvahs, religious bathhouses, also religious schools. So absolutely everything was destroyed except this building. Because this synagogue survived thanks to its location. It's in Old Town. Where you have noticed the streets are narrow, the buildings are wall to wall, and if you are in Riga for, let's say, for 2 days, you have noticed this is quite a windy city. Always there's at least a soft wind going through. So keeping in mind all 3 conditions, dense architecture, narrow streets, and windy weather, if you would try to torch something down in the Old Town, probably fire would spread. And the Nazis didn't want to risk the possible damage of the lovely buildings of Old Town because they wanted those buildings for themselves. The Nazi plan was quite simple. If they win the Second World War, they would fuse together all 3 Baltic republics. So Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania would be melted together to become like, we can call it, administrational unit of Greater Germany, what would be called Ostland. And where to put the administration and ministries? Imagine the map of Baltics. Right in the bullseye, it's Riga. So this was supposed to be like the future office space of the Nazi administration. That's why they were so careful about the buildings. Still, they wanted to demolish the synagogue, but after the war and manually, meaning brick by brick, brick by brick. So, you know, the war went different direction, so the building still stands. And this synagogue, I would say they can be extremely proud about one item. They still have the original Torah. You know, in Christian places, the main text is the Bible, while in synagogues, those are Torahs. And when you travel sort of a North and Eastern Europe, and you visit some country where used to be Nazis during the Second World War, let's say if you go inside a synagogue in modern day Ukraine, you would see that they have a Torah, but probably that's a replica. Originals usually were lost during the war, because, you know, Nazis were not trying to destroy only people or buildings, but pretty much everything. What could at least slightly remind that Jews even existed. And everything so fragile, as made from paper, a Torah book or painting, in the bonfire, and there in the smokes, there disappears the history and heritage. So this Torah survived because it was taken in by a priest from that Calvinist church. What I showed you around the corner is an example of Dutch Baroque. So it didn't came in the Nazis' mind that the most important text is not hidden in, let's say, rabbi's apartment or other obvious locations, but is in the safekeeping of a priest from absolutely different religion. And it was a couple of weeks ago, one tourist asked, it was a really honest question, like why? You know, why the priest took the risk? To be honest, we don't know. This story, it have a lot of empty gaps in the middle, because it's retold through the Holocaust survivors. So not even the first eyewitnesses, but you know, it's retold. So we have only the first name and last name of the priest, but not his sort of a testimony. So I would say that, let's push maybe on that side. That's easier.
Bueno, aparentemente
Only one part there.
esta única sinagoga se salvó porque podía, al ser destruida, afectar los demás edificios de la vieja ciudad. Pero los nazis sí quemaron varios libros, ¿no? La torre, cosas
But I would
de
say
eso,
that
¿no?
maybe just an amazing person was amazing person, and that's it, you know? There's no need always to look for some material explanations, because sometimes tourists are asking, did the Jewish community bribe the priest, maybe big pile, gold, silver? I don't think so, because, you know, even in this darkest moment of the last century, the Holocaust, we have plenty of those little sort of, how to say, amazing stories where people are showing remarkable bravery. And my lucky guess would be that this is also one of those situations. Then, there's quite an important story also about the next oppressive regime, what we have after the Nazis and the Soviet Union. Because, and if you are wondering why the gates are closed and why some people are going in and out, it's Saturday, it's Shabbat. So today it's closed for general public, it's only for the community. So if you want to visit the building tomorrow, 10 a.m. till 5 p.m., it's open. Today, it's off limits. But about religion in the Soviet Union, I have noticed that there is this misconception in Western countries, and especially in different continents, like let's say US or so, how religion worked. Because one exception is Stalin's Soviet Union. That was the darkest moment. I'm talking about Soviet Union after Stalin died, so post-1953. It wasn't that the Soviets were closing down by force every church, synagogue, or let's say cathedral. They were a little bit smarter than that. They were trying to make the situation, conditions, when the believers are closing their places themselves. So this was mostly achieved by adding a lot, and I really mean a lot, of extra tax to pay. So there was religious tax on religious buildings. But if the local community was wealthy enough, they could literally pay off the government. And this was one of those synagogues, one of those rare synagogues in the entire USSR, which was open for general public. 60s or 70s, you could go in and you could practice your belief. But still, it's Soviet Union, not the most democratical country in the history, so there were some consequences to consider. So if you were religiously active in the USSR, then don't expect the best career options. You know, you will not be a professor in university or in charge of some factory, but still, if your belief was more important than your material status, then this was one of the options. And then the last thing, maybe on a little bit lighter note, it's about the building itself. It's built in 1905, in the style of Art Nouveau. And you know, Riga is quite famous about our Art Nouveau architecture. Those who are Germans, das bist Jugendstil, in Spain, Modernismo, for Russians, Stil Modern. What else we have? For Germans, Jugendstil. But it's the same style, only different names in different countries. But when people want to see some Art Nouveau, usually they go to Vienna in Austria, or maybe to Brussels in Belgium. In Riga, we have more Art Nouveau buildings than these cities combined. Riga's Art Nouveau collection is more than 800 buildings in this style, and this is one of them. And I like to travel, and I like architecture, and I cannot prove this, you must just need to take my word. There's not so many Art Nouveau synagogues in Europe. So if you have a limited time in this city and you want to see something amazing from inside, I would put this building on your list. Because of 3 reasons. First of all, the historical reason. It's the only remaining synagogue, so it's quite a unique object. Secondly, it's a gem of architecture. because from inside it's really
Bueno,
well
y acá lo que
decorated.
mencionan es que
As in Art Nouveau, they used a lot of daylight,
es
so it's
posible
really
que se
light,
haya
not so
conservado
extreme as
esta
they
ciudad
usually
por
are.
la
And the
arquitectura en
last
sí,
reason,
o sea,
it's sort of in the backside of the old
quisieron
town.
tenerla, ¿no?
You know, if some of your friends have been to Riga, if they haven't done this walking tour, or if they are not doing a big before research, probably they haven't noticed this building. So this is probably the most alternative object in the mainstream old town. So, if any questions?